Okay, Yoran.
Okay. I was ready last week. I haven't done anything to prepare for today. So, Siyata D'Shmaya. Hashem Sevasai Tiftach Afigi Tzlusecho. Hashem, please open up my lips so that I can only say things that make you happy and make you, and give you praise. The last shir, we concluded part one of Timer Devorah 2 weeks ago. And it's very interesting that as we go into part two, which is essentially going through the 10 spheros, really the 9 plus 1, as we'll talk about in a minute. Those spheros being Chochma, Bina, Das. Das being the interconnectability of Chochma and Bina. And then we have Ches, Gevur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod Yesod, and Malchus. As we go through them, we understand that there is a certain hierarchy that we'll try to explain today. We'll also try to explain what the idea is of a sphera. We did it once before, but we're going to go into more detail about that now. And really, if we look in the introduction to the Zohar HaKodesh, the Pasach Eliyahu, when it describes the first of the spheres, which I didn't even mention, it says concerning it, Magid Mireshis Acharis. That from the beginning, what's going to happen in the end is known. Sof Ma'aseh Machshav Tchila. Everything is predetermined. Time really is no different than space. It's measurable, it's discernible, and it's changeable. And those rarefied souls that are able to connect to that beautiful stream are able to connect to space and time and rise above it. I heard 2 brilliant stories this week, very, very wonderful stories about tzaddikim. One I sent to our group, that the question was asked, how come when the Hamas terrorists, Yimach Shemam Zichron, where their bones rot, when they attacked all the Jewish Shtetlach and the cities down south of Akim, Shterot, they didn't go into where? Where did the Baba Sali live? Netivot. They didn't go to Netivot. And there is a remarkable story which I've sent to the group, you'll see it, that's circulating now. It comes from a very authoritative source. And they captured one of the Hamas terrorists and they asked him, big leader, they asked him, why didn't you go into Netivot? He said, we did. But there was 3 old men there that stopped us and said, you better not go in if you know what's good for you. And they showed him pictures of some of the tzaddikim who lived in Netivot. And the 3 they pointed out were the Baba Sali, the Rosh Hashiva of Rav Meir, and one other. They said, you better not go in if you know what's good for you. And they said, okay. They didn't go in. That's the first story. The second story I read on Shabbos. There was I'm just going to tell you a little sweet little part of it.
Yes, right.
We are well protected here. This is the city which is really has everything looking out for us, down below and up above and the right and the left. This is the place you have to come if you want to feel safe. There's no safer place in the whole world except for maybe Yerushalayim. But the tzaddikim love us. And Hashem loves us, and Hashem wants us to be close to Hashem, and the tzaddikim want us to reach out, because Rabbi Nachman puts it very well. He says, when we leave this world, it's like going from one room to the next. And if we take care of ourselves in this world, He'll take care of us in the next world very, very well. And we'll continue to connect to this world. So the story was that there was 2 orphans. And one of them was 2 Jewish orphans. One of them was the maidservant of the Rebbetzin of the Rebbe of Elimelech of Blizhensk. And the other one, her name was Blima. And the other one was a wonderful young man who was very serious, who was taken in by a very wealthy man. And he went, this servant whose name was Bensi goes to the Rebbe of Elimelech Blizhensk. And he says to him, I'm maritable age, and my master also may need some help. So the Rebbe of Elimelech tells him, we have a maidservant who is a Yisoyama, she's an orphan. Maybe she would be able to help out your master as well. Very pure, very simple soul. She says, okay, fine. Never did he once consider that she would be his zivug, his mate. So he brings her back, and they work together. And then, make a long story short, the master's house burns down, everything is lost. And they go back and they talk to each other, and she says to him, Bensi, we worked together for a few years. I guess you're really not interested in me. And he says, what are you saying? What are you talking about? I've always wanted to get married to you. But the simplicity, anyway, to make a long story short, they don't have their employment anymore. They go to the Rebbe of Elimelech of Blizhensk. The Rebbe gives them a bracha. They get married. All the tzaddikim are there at the chasana. And the Rebbe of Elimelech tells them, if you have a chasana, you have to give gifts. So I'm giving you the city of Dobranshta, I think the name of the city was. And the Rebbe of Naphtali of Ropshit says, I'm going to give you the windmill, which is the most prosperous business in the entire area. And tzaddikim go around and they give them tremendous gifts. Very nice. It sounds like, good thinking, good idea, very sweet. It almost reminds you like when the Hungarians came to the United States after World War II. They had nothing. But they built themselves up so that when somebody would bid for an aliyah, instead of saying, I bid $100, he would say, I bid $100,000. Tremendous hyperbole. And many of these people became very wealthy. You find that in New York, you find it in Los Angeles, many communities where the immigrants from Hungary came. Anyway, so you read the story, you think the same thing, very nice. The tzaddik is giving him a bracha, it'll be very nice, he'll have a lot of money, and they'll be very successful. After the chasana, they have, one more thing. After the chasana, they run into their old employer. And he is so down and out you can't imagine. He has nothing. And he says to him, Master, is there anything I could do for you? I don't know what you could do for me, but if I had 100 gold rubles, I could probably get started all over. That was every penny that the two of them had collected to start their new home. And without question, without thinking, they gave him the 100 rubles, and they started their new life together. Not knowing where they're going to go, what they're going to do. They had a horse and a wagon. As they're going to where they're going to, he was a wood chopper, so they were going to chop down wood. They hear very faintly in the distance, help, help. It so happens that the prince of the entire area, it was his wedding night the night before also. And he drank a little bit too much. And he wanted to clear his head out. So he took his horse and he rode into the woods, not knowing where he was going, and he fell into quicksand. And he was up to his neck. And they saw him, Bensi saw him, and with every last bit of strength, he attached a rope to him, and he attached the rope to the horse, and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled him out. And he saved his life. And together they went back to the castle. And the queen and the king looked at their son and said, "What happened? This man saved my life. You saved our son's life on the day of his wedding day? We're going to give you Bamdrocha as a gift, that city." And the dukes are all there said, "And this business, and this business." Exactly as the tzaddikim said it was going to be. That's how it was. And that's what we say, Magid Mereshis Achris. Everything is known by the high souls. And that's what Keser is. And that's how we started the beginning of part 1, which I'm going to go through very, very quickly to lead into part 2, because it really is a continuation. What did we say at first? That our job in this world is to emulate our Creator. How? According to our actions. Because if our appearance is beautiful, but our actions don't reflect that, then it creates tremendous, tremendous chilul Hashem. And people say about that person, beautiful appearance, but ugly deeds. Now listen to what he's going to say now. Here. Lefichach, roish yadama el pulas hakeser. Therefore, one should emulate the qualitative functions of Keser. And that's exactly what part 1 is about. Those 13 attributes, higher attributes of Rachamim are functional emulation of the divine. You know, we talk about the latest and greatest craze in modern medicine is functional medicine. Instead of looking at, oh, you have this, take that. Instead, look how, instead of the structure of the body is working, how the function is working. And that's what the Holy Ramak is telling us to do as well. We need to emulate the functions of how Hashem runs the world. We learned about the 13 ways in which he bestows kindness. So now let's look a second. And we'll read again the very end of chapter 1. We just finished the 13 ways, the functional attributes in which a person can emulate his Creator, which are the higher attributes of compassion and their benefit, their segula, how they magically can connect us to Hashem. If you recall, a while back, we talked about how the Medrash talks about Hashem, how he related to us at Matan Torah, when he gave us the Torah. And the way the Medrash explains it, the Zohar Kodesh explains it, is that when the Jews received the Torah, there was an image of Hashem in front of them. And the image was Zakein Mali Rachamim. There was a Zayda, a grandfather, who was full and overflowing with mercy. And that, my friends, is exactly what Keser is. Keser is this attribute of Hashem, which has all the benefits of a grandparent and none of the liabilities of parents. You want a present? Go to Zayda. Because there's no limits. A father gives, a father doesn't work all the time. A mother is around the children all the time. The children ask her for stuff. Go ask your father. And back and forth and back and forth. And they're not usually on the same page, even though we say that they're they're two inseparable beings, father and mother, Abba and Ima, Chochma Bina. But above them is something else. We talked about the spheres. We said the Chochma Bina, the highest spheres. If you would consider that you're going into a place you're not familiar with. You're walking, you're coming, and you're leaving this place of familiarity, and you're coming to this place where you don't know anything. You haven't been here before. And as you go, it's getting later and later, it's dark. And it appears as if it's unending, it's endless, it's Ein Sof. That which is above our head and our knowledge and our cognition and our awareness is a place where there's only two things. There is Emunah, because we're never alone. Hashem is always with us. And there's Or Ein Sof. And there is an endless, infinite light. So what is between the Or Ein Sof above us and Abba and Ima, who've been holding our hands and now are thrusting us into this darkness? What's between them? Between them is Keser. Al Pi Kabbalah, they say that there are four faces, four partsufim, which manifest themselves, in which Hashem manifests himself in this world. And they correspond to the four letters of Hashem's name. Yud corresponds to Abba. Hey, and that's Chochmah. Hey corresponds to Bina, and that's Ima. What's the third letter of Hashem's name? Vav corresponds to Zeir Anpin. How Abba and Ima are able to give to us in this world. It is the functionality of giving birth, so to speak. The power of giving corresponds to the letter Vav. Vav, what's the numerical value of Vav? Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, 6. And Vav incorporates within it Chesed, Devorah, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. How many? 6. So that's the Vav. Not only that, but what's the direction of a Vav? It's a straight line upward. Because a Vav is constantly taking from Abba and Ima. It's taking in order to give to the Hey. The Hey is the last letter. And the Hey is Malchus. Malchus is like the moon. It's the recipient of all of the light that's been received through Abba and Ima, down to Zeir Anpin, which is Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Nefesh, Hod, Yesod. And it's all nishtalshel. It's brought downward until it's able to be received by Malchus. Not only that, but as we're going to learn when we get to Chachma, very soon in Mitzvah Hashem, not today, if the idea of Chachma is also the idea of a college professor, lahavdil elef havdalas. And if a teacher is giving to his students, or her students, and they're not able to understand, they're falling asleep, they're throwing spitballs, they're losing interest, they're yawning, something's wrong. And you can't blame the student for not getting enough sleep or not eating properly, not having a good breakfast. the instructor, the Chacham has to look to himself and has to make sure that he gives in a manner and in a way and that the recipient, the student, is able to be able to comprehend and to process and use the information that's been given. Because as we're going to learn in Torah Devorah later on when we come to Chachma, if somebody is teaching something and the recipient is not able to grasp it, it causes tremendous damage. What kind of damage?
More damage than if you didn't try to.
That's right. Tremendous damage. Think about I know somebody who came from Holocaust survivors. And he was told, this is what you have to do. You always have to do it. And they sent him to different yeshivas. And he went to out-of-town yeshivas. And he got nothing out of the yeshivas. And he's a good soldier today, better than a lot of people. He does all the mitzvahs that he can. He doesn't know anything. How many more people do you know that came from religious homes, but it was forced down their throats in their homes and in the yeshivas? And they hated Torah. And they hated learning. And they hated the tradition because it represented punishment. It represented that which they weren't able to grasp. So that's what Malchus is. Malchus is making oneself into a vessel to receive. A vessel that has nothing, it has no pollution in it, it's just an open, clean vessel. And the teacher, the Chacham needs to be able to direct the lesson specifically on the level of that Hey, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the last letter of Hashem's name. But there's something else. And we alluded to it before. We said that the 9 spheres, Chachma corresponds to Abba, Bina corresponds to Ima, Zeir Anpin corresponds to the 6 middle ones, and Malchus corresponds to Hey, or the ability to receive. That's only 9. What's the 10th sphere?
The next keter. The next keter.
Very good. As we said, and as Shlomo just said, there are 4 worlds. And the lowest sphere of the previous world is the highest sphere of the next world down. And the highest of the highest is called Atzilus, or Adam Kadmoin, and that's the Keser of Atik. And on each of the 4 worlds, I don't want to go into the worlds now, but the highest place is Keser. And this Keser is a place which is right between this Or Ein Sof, where we don't know what there is, this thing which is beyond our grasp, and the worlds of beneficence, Abanima, and giving and giving and giving. And it corresponds to the little tip, the little pitzel on top of the Yud. That's Keser. It's a place which is physical but non-physical, spiritual but non-spiritual, almost unreachable, and yet there. Listen to what Rabbi Nachman tells us it is, quoting the Zohar Kodesh in Torah Chaf Daled. Here. Keser is spread out as a curtain between the creation and the creator. It's where the unfathomable is made to be fathomable. And that is exactly, my friends, what Tomer Devorah is all about in the beginning. The 13 attributes of Rachamim represent that Keser. And now we're going to go on and learn more. So part 2 begins as follows. Oh, I didn't read you the very end of the first part again, which leads into it. This is the 13 ways that Hashem makes him similar to us. That they're the high. We read this. However a person acts functionally in this world, he's able to open up worlds of abundance above. Exactly as he acts, so too he's given from above. And he causes, by how he acts, that particular midah will shine in the world. So those 13 attributes are the essential first part of Keser. Now let's go on. Furthermore, we need to emulate Hashem functionally by making ourselves like Keser, and to do that, we have to do the following. And the way we do that is by making ourselves a vessel that can therefore accomplish those 13 attributes of mercy. What's the first way we can do it? How do we first make ourselves vessels to be able to accomplish what Hashem wants us to do in this world? The first and the most all-encompassing of all midas, midas ha'anava. And that's humility. Astonishing, astounding. You would think, I'm climbing to this rarefied air, going higher than creation, than Abba Ve'ima, to Keser, where the air is so thin I can barely breathe. And in order to be in Keser, I have to first make myself into a master of humility. It is more important than any other midah. There's nothing which is higher and more matzil. How do you translate matzil?
Redeeming.
No, with an aleph. From Atzilus. There's nothing which is higher. But it doesn't say always, but it's often looking downward and keeping its eyes on the world. So it's getting this incredible light from the Or Ein Sof, and it's just sucking it in. It's almost as if you can imagine going on top of a high mountain and just feeling one with God. And yet it's constantly looking downward. And this is for two reasons. The beauty of Keser is that it's humiliated. We say that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most modest man that ever faced the earth. Why? Because he saw greatness. So too Keser is aware of God's incredible, infinite beauty and giving and infinity. And having that awareness causes Keser to feel very humbled and very small. So that's why Keser is embarrassed to look at that which created it. Elamat siloi maybe loy tadur lativoi v'maybe betachtoinim. And so he knows that Hashem is always giving to him. And so as a result, he's constantly giving downward. These guys. So too, a person should learn from this. Don't just look up. Don't just reach higher and higher. A person should always have their eye peeled, and all those people that are under their domain, all those people that they are responsible for. and to make oneself as small as they can. And how do we do that? Now he's going to tell us what we're going to start learning next week. But first, I'm going to give you a little sneak preview. The way we can accomplish the integrating Kesser into our lives is through our sensory organs. Our sensory organs. It's very interesting that the Holy Rashash, in the front of the Sidurim of the Mekubalim, and most Sephardi Sidurim, this one, Sidur Mefurish Kavanat Halev, has it. If you look here, you'll see, you'll see that there is a chart. And if you let your imagination flow a little bit, you'll see in that chart, it has Hashem's name many times repeated. On the right side, it has Chochmah. On the left side, it has Bina with Hashem's name. On the top above them, corresponding to the apex of the sagittal suture, where the two bones come together and where the soft part of a baby's head, the fontanelle, is Keser. This is where in craniosacral therapy, as I've told you before, this is where the fluid opens up and bathes the entire spine, going to this one place. And this is where Keser is. And then it has the two nostrils. And then it has the eyes and the nose and the mouth. All of these correspond to the head, this upper part. Later on, it goes through the Tiferes and the Zeir Anpin, which is the Vav. And finally, it has Malchus. And this is how we can make Hashem part of us, by imagining that the different organs of our body, including the sensory organs, are part of us. So too here, as we're going to learn, within Keser, you have those sensory organs as well. That Hashem's light comes through this place and bathes and influences our eyes and our ears and our nostrils and our mouths. The 7 branches of our holy menorah that correspond to our brain. Now, hold that thought for a second. And one second. I'm going to read one more thing. Sar'ein savlan va'anav kelokeni b'midas hakesah shi tachlis rachamim v'lo yikanas shum pagam v'lun oven v'lo din v'lo shum mida manas milashkiach. Yeah. So besides Keser corresponding to the head and the apex of the head and the sensory organs, and this quality of humility, of modesty, he points out that there is nothing in the entire world more humble than this attribute of Keser that Hashem gives us. And he is the quintessence of Rachamim. He's the ultimate of Rachamim. And in this Rachamim, no blemishes can enter. There can be no blemish, no sin, no judgment, no attribute that can prevent Hashem giving and giving more and giving more. So too we should make sure with ourselves that nothing prevents us from looking out for those that are within our realm, within our sphere of influence, that we can always give to them. Nothing should stop us from giving to those who need us. And no bad deed should ever come and influence us, stopping us from being able to give. Because we need to be able to give every single moment and constantly. Now, before we conclude today, I'm going to read you something that seems like a stira. It seems redundant almost. When you skip ahead, after Keser comes what? Chochmah. Now, we said that Keser had two aspects to it. It has the aspect of receiving this infinite light with tremendous humility, knowing that Hashem is, was, and always will be, and is constantly giving. And at the same time, looking downward and never ceasing to view every beautiful creation as that which we can do, we can give to, we can do only good to. So that is Keser. Now, listen to what it says about Chochmah. Hine HaChochmah Elyon prusa al kol nimtzoim kiloim im hayose ne'elemes v'niskefes. Chochmah is so elevated and it spreads out over every creation. And it's remarkably transcendent. V'alei nemar, as concerning it, it says, Ma rav masecha Hashem, how great are your works, Hashem. Kulam bechochma asita. You have created the world using chochma. Kachrui la'adam she'eteh chochmasa mitzuyim. So too, a person should make sure that his chochma is present Bakol in everything he does. And he should give to every single person according to their ability to receive. And he should give to them. And nothing should stop him from wanting to give to them. Then he says, there's two faces to Chachma. And this is, by the way, the only place in all Hebrew grammar that you find panim in the singular. Bet you knew that. Bet you thought the word panim was a singular word. No, it's a plural word. Pana elyon, pana el keser. The pana elyon, the upper face, looks up towards keser. Ve'eno isam panim istaklin lamata el mekabim elama. And this face constantly is looking up and receiving from above. Pana sheni tachtoin. And so he receives from above and he gives to down below. So too a person needs to have these two faces. The higher face, the one which is going up, is a one should constantly think about. One should do his boidus. One should reflect and talk and pray to his maker in order to increase his wisdom. And the second is to teach people from that wisdom.